Oh yeah, and today is a Sunday, September 3rd, 2023. We are already into the third day of the month. 28th of September is the beginning of our 6 day national holiday called Chuseok. Chuseok is the same as the Chinese Moon Harvest Festival. The festival or the holiday or the ritual originated in China and also respected by Korea and Vietnam, all other Asian nations. But I believe we are more civil, more trained, more quieter, much quieter. In China, they use the firecrackers, fireworks, and so on. It's quite loud and rowdy and sometimes dangerous, but fun. Uh, where I digressed, but I just wanted to say that we are having a 6 day holiday coming up at the end of the September 28th to October 3rd. So it will be a 6 day holiday. If you plan to travel to Asian country, your airline ticket would be quite expensive because many Asians travel in that particular time of the year. You gotta be careful with the airline ticketing travel because the traffic would be quite snarled on the highway. So if you land in Seoul, then that's fine. But if you plan to travel outside Seoul, it will be quite a tricky question because all the buses, cars, trucks would be on the road, and there would be huge traffic jams everywhere. You got to be careful. It's the same with China. In China, maybe more severe than Korea. So, as with yesterday, let's find out American court system and structure. This article is from uscourts.gov, and I will try to read this article, to practice English by reading it loud. Steve Kaufman, the good gentleman who is the language teacher, he said, don't study very hard, or don't focus on the basics, just go with the flow to learn a language. So instead of uh, stopping by the particular expression that I want to memorize, maybe I need to skip. I don't know. I'll just try. So the reading would be quite smooth. Court role and structure. 누워있지 말라니까 전체가 다 누워있으면 안 돼. Federal courts hear cases involving the constitutionality of the court role and structure. Federal courts hear cases involving the constitutionality of a law, cases involving the laws and treaties of the U.S. ambassadors and public ministers, disputes between two or more states, admiralty law, also known as maritime law, and bankruptcy cases. Really? So federal courts hear cases involving the constitutionality of a law, cases involving the laws and treaties of the U.S. ambassadors and public ministers, disputes between two or more states, admiralty law, also known as maritime law, admiralty, law, and bankruptcy cases. I'll look it up later. The federal judiciary operates separately from the executive and legislative branches, executive, legislative, and judicial branches, but often works with them as the Constitution requires. Federal laws are passed by Congress and signed by the President. Okay. Federal laws are passed by Congress and signed by the President. The judicial branch decides the constitutionality of federal laws and resolves other disputes about federal laws. However, judges depend on our government's executive branch to enforce court decisions. Courts decide what really happened and what should be done about it. They decide whether a person committed a crime and what the punishment should be. They also provide a peaceful way to decide private disputes that people can't resolve themselves. Depending on the dispute or crime, some cases end up in the federal courts and some end up in the state courts. Learn more about the different types of federal courts. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution created the Supreme Court and authorized the Congress to pass laws establishing a system of lower courts. In the federal court system's present form, 94 district-level trial courts and 13 courts of appeals sit below the Supreme Court. Okay, so under the Supreme Court, there are 94 district-level trial courts and 13 courts of appeals sit below the Supreme Court. Learn more about the Supreme Court. Courts of appeals. There are 13 appellate courts that sit below the U.S. Supreme Court, and they are called the U.S. Courts of Appeals. U.S. Courts of Appeals. The 94 federal judicial districts are organized into 12 regional circuits, each of which has a court of appeals. Where's one, man? Where's the remaining one? So 94 federal judicial districts are organized into 12 regional courts, each of which has a court of appeals. The appellate court's task is to determine whether or not the law was applied correctly in the trial court. Appeals courts consist of 3 judges and do not use a jury. Consists of 3 judges. A court of appeals hears challenges to district court decisions from courts located within its circuit, as well as appeals from decisions of federal administrative agencies. The Court of Appeals hears challenges to district court decisions from courts located within its circuit. Okay, to district court decisions from courts located within its court, as well as appeals from decisions of federal administrative agencies. Both sides. In addition, the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit has nationwide jurisdiction to hear appeals in specialized cases, such as those involving patent laws and cases decided by the U.S. Court of International Trade and the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. Learn more about the courts of appeals. Oh, sorry, I was distracted by my own thought about my second daughter's future. I will read this one more time. In addition, the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit has nationwide jurisdiction to hear appeals in specialized cases, such as those involving patent laws and cases decided by the U.S. Court of International Trade and the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. Okay. They have a nationwide jurisdiction sometimes. They have nationwide jurisdiction. Bankruptcy appellate panels. Bankruptcy appellate panels, BAPs, are 3-judge panels authorized to hear appeals of bankruptcy court decisions. These panels are a unit of the federal courts of appeals and must be established by that circuit. 5 circuits have established panels: 1st Circuit, 6th Circuit, 8th Circuit, 9th Circuit, and 10th Circuit. District courts. The nation's 94 districts bankruptcy appellate panels are 3-judge panels authorized to hear appeals of bankruptcy court decisions. These panels are a unit of the federal courts of appeals, so that's the 13th Court of Appeal, and must be established by that circuit. District courts. So that's the 5 circuits have established panels. That's panels, man. Courts of Appeal. 12. Where's the 13? 13th. District courts. The nation's 94 district or trial courts are called U.S. district courts. District courts resolve disputes by determining the facts and applying legal principles to decide who is right. Trial courts include the district judge who tries the case and a jury that decides the case. Magistrate judges assist district judges in preparing cases for trial. They may also conduct trials in misdemeanor cases. Magistrate judges. There is at least one district court in each state, and the District of Columbia. Each district includes a U.S. bankruptcy court as a unit of the district court. 4 territories of the United States have U.S. district courts that hear federal cases, including bankruptcy cases: Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, and Northern Mariana Islands. There are also 2 special trial courts. The Court of International Trade addresses cases involving international trade and customs laws. The U.S. Court of Federal Claims deals with most claims for money damages against the U.S. government. U.S. Court of Federal Claims, the Court of International Trade, at least one district court in each state, and the District of Columbia. Bankruptcy courts. Federal courts have exclusive jurisdiction over bankruptcy cases involving personal, business, or farm bankruptcy. This means a bankruptcy case cannot be filed in state court. Through the bankruptcy process, individuals and businesses that can no longer pay their creditors may either seek a court-supervised liquidation of their assets, or they may reorganize their financial affairs and work out a plan to pay their debts. Creditors work out a plan to pay their debts. Reorganize their financial affairs. Liquidation of their assets. Article 1 courts. Congress created several Article 1 or legislative courts that do not have full judicial power. Judicial power is the authority to be the final decider in all questions of constitutional law, all questions of federal law, and to hear claims at the core of habeas corpus issues. Habeas corpus. It's been a long time that I encountered that kind of word. Article 1 courts are U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, U.S. Tax Court. Article 1 courts. Congress created several Article 1 or legislative courts that do not have full judicial power. Judicial power is the authority to be the final decider in all questions of constitutional law, all questions of federal law, and to hear claims at the core of habeas corpus issues. Look inside appellate courts. Step inside the U.S. courts of appeals. Learn about processes, court culture, and landmark cases. Understanding the federal courts. Want to further develop your knowledge of the federal courts? Read Understanding in the Federal Courts. Court chores, separation of powers. Separation of powers is the fundamental way our government balances power so that one part of the government doesn't overpower another. The idea is that each branch of government has its own roles and areas of authority. Separation of power. Law Day. Lively civil discussion is the hallmark of Law Day, which is celebrated every year on May 1st and throughout the month of May. U.S. Federal Courts Circuit Map. There are 14, but I see only 12, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Download a map of how the federal courts are split into 12 regional circuits and 1 federal circuit. Regional circuit and 1 federal circuit. Okay, I'll just do that because I was curious about that. But it's very slow. I'll just tap that. Graphic boundaries of United States Courts of Appeals and the United States District Courts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Island, Federal Circuit. Supreme Court is in Washington, D.C. Federal Circuit, D.C. Circuit, Federal Circuit, Supreme Court. I see. So 12 is for D.C. Circuit, and there's another 1 Federal Circuit in the D.C. and Supreme Court. So that makes 13 district courts. Okay, so I'll just go back to the article, this article, but from this article we learned many interesting words. Habeas, focus, and so on, right? And appellate court, and what else? I forgot the word. There was one word that magistrate judges, court decide peaceful dispute, Supreme Court, Congress, courts of appeals, 13, right? 12 regional and 1 federal circuit. Patent laws cases decided by the U.S. Court of International Trade and the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. Bankruptcy appellate panels, BAPs, district courts, bankruptcy of Virgin Islands, bankruptcy courts, farm bankruptcy, Article 1 courts. Let's find out what hello, magistrate, amicus curiae, magistrate. Magistrate, civil officer who has the authority to administrate the law. Minor judicial officer who has limited jurisdiction in criminal cases. That is, justice of the peace, The term magistrate is used in a variety of systems of governments and laws to refer to a civilian officer who administers the law. In ancient Rome, a magistratus was one of the highest ranking government officers and possessed both judicial and executive powers. In other parts of the world, such as China, magistrate was responsible for administration of a particular geographic area. Today, in some jurisdictions, a magistrate is a judicial officer who hears cases in a lower court and typically deals with more minor or preliminary matters. In other jurisdictions, for example England and Wales, magistrates are typically trained volunteers appointed to deal with criminal and civil matters in their local areas. Magistrate, habeas courts, jury, federal edition. Yeah, I have limited memory, so bear with me. You will be like me when your time comes. Plan, yeah, habeas corpus, habeas corpus. So here, habeas corpus. Habeas corpus. Sukumalade.
Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus, Latin, writ. Writ, the author, the request. Author, writ, requiring that a prisoner be brought before court to decide the legality of his detention. Writ, requiring that a person be brought into court for questioning. Habeas corpus, from medieval Latin, that you have the body, is a recourse in law through which a person can report an unlawful detention or imprisonment to a court and request that the court order the custodian of the person, usually a prison official, to bring the prisoner to court to determine whether detention is lawful. The writ habeas corpus was described in the 18th century by William Blackstone as a great and efficacious writ in all manner of legal confinement. It is summoned with the force of court order. It is addressed to the custodian, a prison official, for example, and demands that the prisoner be brought before the court, and that the custodian present proof of authority, allowing the court to determine whether custodian has lawful authority to detain the prisoner. So here, I will just look up another. Here, habeas corpus, body, right? I have a body. Habeas corpus. Yeah, I'm looking for the Korean translation. 인신보호영장, habeas corpus. Habeas Corpus Act. Habeas corpus, 因性保护영장, right? Habeas corpus. And what else? Yeah, magistrate, dude. Custodian, right? 수령, magistrate, 수령. Receipt ledger, age of 3, magistrate recipiency, 행정장관, magistrate. 사법권을 가진 행정장관, 치안판사, justice of the peace, magistrate. Magistrate. Interesting. Magistrate. No Korean translation. That's strange. And I'll just continue to read the English definition of magistrate. A person who acts as a judge in a law court that deals with crimes that are less serious. He will appear before the magistrates tomorrow. Greenway appeared at Bow Street Magistrates Court to face 7 charges of accepting bribes. He was a holdup in front of magistrate. How did he become a magistrate? A judge in a law court that deals with crimes that are not serious. Magistrate. Okay, so thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.